Gallagher.
Is that made by the grandkids?
I'll tell God made that. I can say it's made by one of the grandkids, yeah. Hi, Sean Gallagher here again. Quite a few people have contacted me following the first two videos, asking me about problems that they might encounter whilst walking on the Camino routes, or how they can get the most out of walking, or how can the walk can be a success. So what I've done, I've given that a bit of thought, and I've come up with 9 ways in which you could have problems on your walk Santiago, or 9 things to think about in your planning, so that you can make your Camino a success. I've never got lost on the Camino, and that isn't because I'm good with maps, or because I'm good with a compass, or because I've got a good sense of direction. In fact, the opposite, I've not got a very good sense of direction. And that's one of the reasons why I like walking on the Camino, because it's pretty much impossible to get lost. Right, what you've got to do, right, is follow the yellow arrows and the shells. So hopefully you can see that, and on there you can see a shell telling you which way to go, and also a yellow arrow. So if by chance you do take a wrong turning, and for the next couple of 100 yards you didn't see a yellow arrow, then you obviously need to go back because you've missed one. So all the way throughout France, Portugal, Spain, you see these yellow arrows, right, on trees, on the road, on any signpost telling you which way to go. You'll also see the shell. Now, the shell is a symbol of the pilgrim. So again, all the way through these countries, through Europe, wherever you see a shell, then that means that you're on one of the Camino routes. Now, a shell itself can be a picture of a shell. It can be a shell tied to a tree. It can even be a metal shell in the ground. For example, in Toulouse, walking through Toulouse, you follow the shells, which are metal shells, which are actually into the pavement. So that's the traditional shell, and the shell can also be, in that format as well. So the shell is a symbol of the Camino, and the idea of being symbolic is that all the lines on the shell all come to one point. So that's when you've got all the roads leading to. So there's not just one route, there's all these different roads leading into Santiago. It's also thought that the original pilgrims, that once they'd been to Santiago and then they went to the coast to Finisterre, Murcia, then they might have taken shells readily available on the beach and used the shell for water, or used it for eating. Right, so I think it is important before you embark on a Camino that you do your own research. Obviously you can look at the several different YouTubes which are available. There are lots of books written on the Camino, and you can look at the information provided by the people who organise travel on the Camino. So the way I do it is I decide how many days I've got available, where I'm going to fly to, how I'm going to get home, and then I actually say where I'm going to be each night while I'm away. And the reason for that is because I contact friends and family and say that I'm going to do this particular Camino this year, and if anybody wants to join me, you can join me in any of the places. So I have to stick fairly rigorously to the plan set out. Obviously some people might prefer not to do that, and they might just rock up, for example, at Saint Jean Pied de Port and just start walking and just stop when they've had enough at the many different places on the Camino Frances. Another good source of information in your planning is the Confraternity of St James, their website. Their website I think is particularly good if you want, because they have a bookshop, so you can actually buy guides on the different routes that you might be interested in, and I think their guides are particularly helpful. You can also get the Pilgrim Passport, which is good for recording where you've been, and obviously then for using when you get to Santiago. You need to be careful in your planning though. You need to be aware, say, of when the Feast of St. James is, which is on the 25th of July, and that's a national holiday in Spain. And if the Feast of St. James falls on a Sunday, then it's called a holy year. So again, look and see whether the year you're travelling in is a holy year, because in particular the number of Spanish travellers, pilgrims, will be considerably higher than in other years. And I'm saying that because you might have a problem with accommodation. You also need to be aware of when Holy Week is. I mean, if you're travelling before Easter, the week before Easter, which is called Holy Week, the week of Maundy Thursday and Good Friday, then again that is a time when people will go to the cities, and also a lot of the restaurants may be closed on those particular days. Don't just rely on one YouTube that you might look at. For example, one of the YouTubes that I looked at said that you didn't need to carry much water because you were able to access water. There'd be several places where you could stop. Now that probably is true on the Camino Frances, but I can assure you, if you started walking from Seville in June and you weren't carrying at least 2 litres of water with you, then there is a risk that you would actually, if you hurt yourself through dehydration. So make sure that you read around and make sure that you do your own research. Yeah, so people who I've been walking with have had to stop walking, either that's at the end of their Camino, or stop for a few days because of blisters on the soles of their feet or on the heel. So what I'm going to do is just tell you how I do it, and I'm not saying this guarantee that you don't get blisters, because I still get blisters from time to time and deal with them. I use a pin. I know maybe it's not the recommended way, not to go into the blister itself, but to go underneath the blister. But a few ideas. I mean, what I use before I put my socks on, I use either Vaseline, or, and I found this from walks in France, but you can get it on the internet. It's French reinforcer knock. So I rub some of this cream onto my feet before I put my socks on, and don't skimp on socks. I think socks are more important in some ways than the actual shoes. So I pay probably more than maybe what I need to for socks, but I buy Folk socks, and they're definitely not cheap. You can definitely get socks which are considerably cheaper than Folk, but I find them pretty good. I just wear one layer. Some people wear 2 layers, a thin one and then a walking sock. I just wear one sock and wear Folk. I do carry these things with me, these blister shields. I always carry those with me, and always end up using them, because if I don't use them myself, then you meet somebody on the way who needs them, and they can be expensive. So that's why I think it's better value spending your money on good socks than spending £5, £6, £7 on a packet of blister shields. One other thing I always carry in my bag is this sort of tube for the toes, because sometimes your toes go over on top of each other, causing blisters. I find this sort of tubing helps to separate them. In terms of actual footwear, I tend to use these low cut, like trainer type shoes, and different makes. I mean, these are Spanish ones. It's Italian, Sorsonsi. Obviously, in the past I've used Merrell, I've used Adidas. So I'm not saying one particular one, it's whatever suits you. But one that does suit me, and that I walk in quite a lot, are these sandals. These are Keen sandals, and I do like these. One reason is because it's open at the back, right? So I can't get blisters on my heel, which was a place where I have got blisters in the past. And also because if they've got the cap at the front, it stops stones coming in. So what I would wear wherever I can do, I would wear these sandals together with the Folk socks, and make sure that I put this on before I start. Right, another common problem is chafing, right? And again, I find this, so I put this on pretty liberally in areas where I'm liable to chaff. Like originally, we used to use Vaseline, just little jars of Vaseline. I ran out of that once in France. I went into the chemist and the chemist recommended this, and so I get these online. So I tend to use these for my feet, and then for areas where I'm likely to chaff in. And chaffing is pretty bad, actually. I mean, again, I've been with people where they started to chaff in. You can't really, once it starts, then it's pretty bad, and it's very difficult to get rid of it if you're walking day after day. I mean, if you're just walking for 1 day a week, then probably be fine. You probably heal up in those few days. But if you're walking day after day, then you need to, if you want, prepare beforehand. There's no use waiting until you start chaffing or wait until you get blisters. Do something to make sure that you don't get them. Right, so you need to be aware, don't you? If you're going to be carrying your rucksack for 10 days, 5 days, 30 days, 40 days, then you've got to make sure that you're not carrying something that you don't need to carry. So there are recommendations. People recommend that you don't carry a bag which weighs more than 8 kilograms, 10% of your own body weight. And the recommended sizes then for rucksacks vary between 36 litres and 65 litres. I think the best thing to do is get a good rucksack if you want one that where you can stack high. Make sure you try it on. Make sure you wear it a few times before you head off on the Camino. But also then just take everything out of it and ask yourself, do I need to take this with me? Again, people who I've walked with, including my daughter, after 2 days she was posting a lot of stuff back to England, and she was throwing other stuff into a rubbish bin. Right. So again, once you're walking day after day, then that does make a difference. Obviously, if you're going with one of these package companies, then they would carry your bag because they know where you're stopping from one day to another day. So they would transport your bag, and you just have your little day bag to carry. You can also yourself, if you know where you're going to be the following day, then the Spanish Postal Service now offer a service where they would carry your bag for €6 from one place to another. But just to be aware of what you've got in your rucksack. Right, one other problem people can have is dehydration, because most people do walk between May and September, and certain obviously parts of Spain can be very hot during that time. So what is important is that you make sure, and again, this may be part of the planning, that you look at what stops you can make. I mean, if you're going to be walking 20 miles in a day, then you want to make sure there are places where you can stop off, maybe to get some food, and obviously make sure you've got places where you can stop for water. And I say the one walk where I see people with problems is the walk from Seville up through Extremadura, where it gets very hot and people really needed to carry at least 2 litres of water. Like I say, there is a wide variety of accommodation on the Camino, between like the public albergues, there's private albergues, there's hotels, bed and breakfast. The hotels vary from, if you want, small hotels to the paradors. And I've only stayed in one of those once. I did stay in one in Tui, so one experience of a parador. But I've never actually been in a position where I didn't have accommodation. Sometimes I've had to walk another 5k down the road. Once or twice I've actually got a taxi to take me to somewhere else. But again, it's about thinking about during the day, and leaving it till the last minute, thinking about where do I plan to stay tonight. Yeah, language is not a barrier, because what you'll find is that the people, if you want, who are on the Camino, they're pretty familiar with English speakers coming through, and they're prepared to speak English, even if we're not in a position where we can speak French, Spanish or Portuguese. I mean, I eat anything, so I don't have any problems. But like vegetarians, travel with vegetarians, and they particularly problem with you in rural France, where it's very difficult to get something other than meat. Obviously, the food throughout the Camino routes does vary considerably. That if you want through on the northern route, you've got good for fish. Travelling through Extremadura up from Seville, you've got the gammon hamon, from the black pigs. Starting off in Le Puy, you've got famous for its Le Puy lentils. And what's good on all of these routes is the wine. Right? The wine is excellent on all of these routes. Okay, that's about it. So what I've tried to get all across to you in this video, is if you want to plan, make sure that you plan what you're going to be doing. Make sure that you look after your feet. Make sure that you're not carrying, what you're carrying is not too heavy. Make sure you always carry water. Try and sort out maybe the day before or that morning where you're going to be sleeping that night. Don't worry too much about not being able to speak French or Spanish. It's not always straightforward if you are a vegetarian or got particularly dietary issues, but if you're a wine lover, then obviously the Camino is the best. Right, thank you.